our YouTube channel, and the link to that is on the homepage. I'd like to welcome, we have a guest on the call on our meeting today, and Joy, we're happy you're here, and she's a guest of Happy Franklin and fairly new to Dallas. So welcome. We hope that you join us again. We meet every Friday at noon virtually right now, and in the future, we'll be hopefully back at Maggiano's. Looking forward to that. We meet at noon at Maggiano's when it's safe for all. So I am going to, I just want to mention if you are on today's agenda, if you would just unmute yourself at that point and then and do your part of the program. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. I am Barb Jeffries. This is the Rotary Club of Park City, and welcome to our 27th meeting of the year. As you all know, February 12th is also the Chinese New Year today. So in honor of that, which is the year of the fox, I would like for all of us to try to be a little bit more ox-like, which is to be honest, to be reliable, and to be hardworking without seeking praise. So I think that's a good thing to work for in 2021. If you have any joys and concerns, if you would please unmute yourself and let us know something you're happy about or something that you would like for us to join you in prayer with. Okay. Well, at this point, we're going to talk about some celebrations. We have some birthdays. We have, this week, we've got Eric Harrison and Philip Bankhead was yesterday, and Mark Neese's birthday's today. So to you three fellas, happy birthday. And please remember to honor yourselves by making donations to either or both of our foundations, the RI or the RCPC Foundation. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Paul Pyrock now. And if he will join us in the invocation, immediately followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and the National Anthem. After that, Nolan Duck will be up to do the Marketplace Advertiser. So we'll start with Paul.
Thank you, Barb. If you would bow your heads and pray with me. Dear God, we thank you for our many blessings. Help us to be thankful for what we have and to focus less on what we don't have. It has been a very difficult past year, and while none of us wants to live the year over, we are still so blessed to be living where we can be free to express our opinion and to choose our leaders. God, we thank you for the freedom to be different and to express our opinion, but we also pray for unity around some things. We pray that we're united in being truthful to each other and ourselves. We pray that we are united in being fair in the way that we deal with others. We pray that we are united in spreading goodwill rather than ill feelings. And we pray that we're united in spreading the benefits of our service. Because if we are united in these things, we will be spreading your blessing. Keep us healthy, keep us safe, and it's in your name that we pray. Amen.
Thank you.
Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United
States of America and to the republic
which it
for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you, Paul.
You're
Next
welcome.
up, thank you. Beautiful. Next up, we have our own Ian, who is going to do the national anthem video.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare made us that star-spangled banner yet wave. O'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
That was wonderful. Next up, we've got Nolan, who's going to tell us who our marketplace advertiser is.
Well, thank you, Barb. Our hub advertiser for the day is Sean Foster of Foster Financial. When economic, market, and political and life factors get us completely blown sideways, as they have the last 12 months, you deserve to hear an objective second opinion from a friend you can trust. Foster Financial is a group of financial advisors who can be that friend to you. They provide a free initial consultation at which you may discuss your wealth management and financial planning needs. Of course, Sean Foster is a member of our club. He's a Paul Harris Fellow and a retirement income certified professional, ready, willing, and able to help you. Let's give a virtual round of applause to Sean for supporting the hub.
Great. Thank you, Nolan and Sean. Appreciate both of you very much. Okay, Olie is up next. She's going to tell us about our 2021 parade theme. And then followed by that, Happy Franklin will tell us about an exciting virtual fellowship event we have coming up. Okay, Sarah.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you to all of the Rotarians who submitted parade themes and all of those who voted on those themes. So we had about 60 Rotarians vote on the various themes, and the winner of this year's parade is United We Stand. So that is the theme of the 2021 4th of July celebration, and that is United We Stand. Thank you, everyone, for your participation.
Thank you, Sarah. And Happy, I think you're on the call. You're going to tell us about our virtual fellowship events. Happy? Well, I will tell you about it. And if you're there, join me. Oh, good. There she is. Happy, I think you just need to unmute and we're good to go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to our social this month. It's a Taste of Italy, presented to us by Anne Connolly. She is a luxury travel advisor. She specializes in Italy and Europe. So we're going to visit some of the regions in Italy, traveled by Anne and Dennis. We're going to learn about the unique foods and wines of the region. Do you know each region has their own style of food? Pizza isn't served in the north, but only in the south. It's a sure sign that you're a tourist if you're eating pizza outside of that region. She's also going to tell us all about Italy, which is now in North Park. And so there's some really cool and unique foods that we haven't had access to before. So she's going to give us a full update on that. That's going to be from 5:30 to 7:30 on Thursday, February 24th. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'll put that out on the calendar today. Please reserve that time. It'll be from 5:30 to 7:30. It's going to be via Zoom, and you're going to be transported to Italy. Thank you.
That's great. And I will probably have a glass of wine with me. So
nice.
Please join me in that. That's really going to be great. I haven't been to Italy yet at North Park, but I've heard it's so cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Happy, for setting that up.
Thank you.
Let's talk about some other things coming up. I just have a couple more quick announcements, and then we'll hear from our speaker. And first is, speaking of speakers, what we have on tap is next week, Robert Wolonsky is going to be here to talk about Dallas History and Heritage Galleries. Bill Sleeper is our chair of the day. On the 26th, the last one of February, is David Munson. And Scurry was able to talk with David and get him to agree to tell us about positive solutions to climate change without restricting oil and gas. And then our very own Stephanie Bowen will be the first Friday in March with Darren Babcock with an update on what's going on with the medical clinic. And then as upcoming events, as Happy just told us about, mark your calendar for the 18th. I'm sorry. First of all, on the 18th is PCR Connect. The Zoom call is at 7 o'clock, and there are lots of fun. I encourage you to join us for that. And then A Taste of Italy will be the 25th. So that will wrap up February. Well, at this point, I would like to introduce our speaker today. She is on the call. Her name is Amy Lewis Hofland. She is the director of the Crow Museum of Asian Art in Dallas, Texas, with preeminent museum dedicated to the arts and cultures of Asia in the southern United States. Our staff, since the museum's inception in 1998, her footprint can be found throughout the museum, including her recruitment and hire of leading Asian art scholars. She launched the Crow Museum as the first wellness museum in the United States. I'm really anxious to hear about that. And molding the museum's award-winning education programs to emphasize collaboration and collective learning, helping to draw over 100,000 museum visitors a year. Amy holds her Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from UT Austin and her master's degree in art education from the University of North Texas, where she's part of the distinguished Marcus Fellow Program. In addition to her work at the Crow Museum, she's a noted author, speaker, community leader, serving on various board leadership positions in DFW. She also is working to create Dallas as a city of compassion and recently formed and co-chairs the Compassion Council for the Dallas Arts District. We have lots to hear about and lots to learn from Amy. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Barb, and thank you to Jeff for this invitation. I've had the joy of being with a couple of Rotaries over the last couple of months, and it's so lovely to be in a space of fellowship and tradition. So I'm really enjoying getting to know more about the Rotary clubs in Dallas. And Barb is right. This is auspicious that your meeting and our topic is held on the beginning of Lunar New Year. You can see that I have my little paper lanterns on the mantle. That's one of the art activities we're offering the public on our Crow Museum Facebook page. For the next 14 days, starting today, we've got little 5-minute videos that are snippets and presentations about what you can learn about Chinese New Year as it is celebrated in China, not just China, but also China, Korea, Vietnam. Those are some places where Chinese New Year is being held today. And so one of the things to say is not to sweep your house today. So that's very bad luck to sweep your house on the first day of Chinese New Year, because a lot of luck has come into the house, and traditionally families will make sure that everything is swept before midnight the day before. Yesterday, and then I think you can sweep a couple days later. So that's one thing. Another thing is to wear red, and Barb's wearing red. I don't know if that's for Chinese New Year, but that's awesome if it is. It is Year of the Ox, and I thought I would just share a couple of things to know about this before we jump into this topic, because this is part of what the Crows wanted us to be able to do, would be culturally competent in what Chinese New Year means. And so in this year of the ox, and think about an oxen, right? Hard labor, repeated labor, steady work, methodical work. So the attributes of the oxen or the ox are kind of what we'll see this year. I read yesterday that the year of the ox will be a year of endurance. That seems to fit where we are as we enter month 11 of pandemic. It's no longer about survival, but about anchoring ourselves and concretizing, which I've never heard that word, but making concrete our dreams. The ox is associated with yin, so that's the feminine energy. So all the female leaders here in the Rotary today can know that this is a powerful year for us. Our responsibilities will feel heavy this year, like an ox would, feel the weight of his or her work. So things that were once easy will require more effort and strength in the year of the ox. So the word that I'm reading in these articles is grit, that we really sort of have. There are things that are going to feel like we want to be able to do the things we're used to doing, and we're just going to have another year of grit. So I thought I might add that. I put the link in there if you don't know your Chinese zodiac. I'm a rat. So this has been this last year, which you'll immediately be able to tell my age, but last year was the year of the rat. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good year for you. So if you're an ox and you're excited, that's not totally how it works. You can do a little research on what your year is like for the oxen. But this is actually a good year for rats and snakes. So if you're a rat or a snake, you can anticipate prosperity. So we'll go into why I know all this, why I have Chinese lanterns in my house, and why I'm wearing red today. It has a lot to do with the Crow Museum of Asian Art. And I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you'll see a slide. I'm going to look at Barb that says Crow Museum of Asian Art of the U.S. Okay, good.
Yes.
I'm getting better at this. Okay.
Very good.
So I hope some of you have visited us downtown. This is a museum that has been in existence since 1998. And now we are not 4 words in title, Crow Museum of Asian Art. We are actually 13. So my talk today is about vision. It's about a leader in our history as a city and his wife, also a leader. 2 people who had a vision for Dallas as an international city, and how it has taken, this vision has taken from a seed to a future now, just 2 years old since we were acquired by the University of Texas at Dallas, to a future as a major museum inside of a major system, the UT system, positioning us as the 6th or 7th, depending on how we scale our museum, major market for Asian art in the country. And I think what I hope to do is kind of give you a sense for why the Crow is important in our city, and as leaders in our city and in this Rotary, I'm hoping to give you some good cocktail party talk for the next time we have cocktail parties. So let's just begin. And I want to position our geography downtown for you a little bit. This is an old slide, but I do this on purpose to share that this is a bird's eye view of the Dallas Arts District. And many of you know some of the major players in the Dallas Arts District. We're looking diagonally at the spine of Flora Street. And you can see One Arts Plaza, hopefully in the upper left. And the Winspear Opera House is the red horseshoe, or the red oval shaped building designed by Lord Foster and Sons out of London. So this was taken, this drawing or rendering was made about 2009. It was with the opening of the Performing Arts Center. And the reason I love this slide is you've got the Trammell Crow Center Tower, you have San Jacinto Tower, which is now called 2100 Ross, and you have Chase Tower in the upper right. Those are all 3 buildings that were part of the Trammell Crow Company development in the 80s. Trammell Crow Center went up in 84. I actually think San Jacinto was a little earlier, 79. Chase Tower was also in the early 80s. The Crow companies did not own just those 3 city blocks. They actually owned this whole swath of land. And it was Trammell Sr., who I'll talk about as the founder of our museum, that really shifted how the city approached art and culture. The original Dallas Arts District, as it was zoned in 1978 and 79 at City Council and in city planning, was to be just 4 city blocks. So it would have been the Trammell Crow Center, the Nasher Sculpture Center, and the 2 blocks of the Dallas Museum of Art. So originally there was a plan to put the Symphony Hall on the site where Trammell Crow Center is, and then a future museum, probably the Nasher at that point, a future museum just north where the Nasher is today. And Trammell was able to turn 8 votes at City Council to encompass 68 acres of the Arts District, which is now just recently, 2 weeks ago, expanded to 118, I think, somewhere right in there. So Trammell had a vision. He had a vision that we couldn't limit ourselves to 4 square city blocks. We needed to think in a much larger scale. He had seen the beautiful arts district of Europe and Russia and other cities, like even the Forbidden City in Beijing. So I think it's interesting to know that he was part of thinking of Dallas as something bigger than itself at that time in the late 70s. And here he is standing next to Margaret Crow. This was probably taken in the late 90s out at the Crow's farm near Mineola, Texas. Maybe a couple of you have been there. And they are truly the first guardians. I like to say that we really don't ever own works of art. We just have this privilege and joy of being the guardians of works of art over the time that they are in our possession. And so I like to refer to this Crow collection as a place, a space of having three guardians. And I'm going to kind of walk you through the three chapters. And I do see a question, which I love because I used to be an art teacher. So I'm going to run down and see. Yes, I am going to cover that, Rodney. That's a great question. And Barb, I also see yours. So I'm gonna not worry about the chat right now and just keep going. And Barb, I'm planning to finish 12:40 for questions or a little earlier. What do you think?
That would be great. That's
Okay.
perfect.
Okay,
Thank
super.
you.
So here we are with the first guardianship. They loved Asia. And we'll talk about how someone from Fitzhugh Avenue grows up to love Asia the way that Trammell Crow did. The second guardian I'll talk about briefly is Trammell S. Crow. I'm sure some of you know Trammell, and I call him Earthman now as he's so involved with EarthX. But for our first 20 years, he was our leader as the president of the board, the founding president of the museum, a major financial piece of our success as a museum without walls, which was his first assignment to me in 1998. So we'll talk about how that came to be. And then finally, the new guardians of the Crow Museum of Asian Art of the University of Texas at Dallas. These are the students, the staff, and the faculty of UT Dallas, a campus which is on the move at 800 West Campbell in Dallas County, partially in the city of Dallas, partially in the city of Richardson. Maybe we could say mostly in the city of Richardson, but I do like that there is a Dallas address up there on the other side of Waterview. So let's start here. This is a archival photograph, two photographs of Trammell on the left and Margaret on the right. And I love them because they capture what they brought to the partnership, right? Trammell was a scrappy, not wealthy person born near Fitzhugh Avenue in East Dallas, just a mile from here, actually. He's in an orchard somewhere around there at that time. And he was born to a very religious family. In fact, his grandmother lived at the corner. This is interesting. She lived at the corner of Buckner and Mockingbird, where it turns into Peavy. And he played there a lot growing up. So that was kind of her family home, but it wasn't a place of wealth. It did have a great view of the future downtown. So Trammell Crow on the left, and I'm going to walk you kind of through his childhood, and Margaret Crow on the right. Obviously a very different upbringing as she is serving tea at a young age for a portrait that was taken. So we're going to talk about Margaret first as the giver. This is her family home, 3600 Armstrong. The skeleton of this house is still there at the corner, and I loved her stories. She was really the precious gift of my work at the Crow, was getting to know her. She passed away in 2014 at the age of 94. She was almost 95. And she talked about how they would call the Highland Park Pharmacy, she and her mother, and ask for ice cream when it was hot. There was no air conditioning in this house, of course. And the man on the little bicycle would ride around the block down Abbott and bring them ice cream cones from the pharmacy. So that's kind of a cute story about living there. She is was the daughter of Lillian B. Doggett and Edwin Doggett on the right. And they both have lifetime histories, generations of planting communities and creating futures for the communities, making a deep, long-lasting impact in the communities they reached. Lillian was a descendant of the family that pioneered the land of University Park and Highland Park. So Lillian's mother, Mrs. Smith, was a widow that came here just after the war. Her husband had died. She came with 30 people in her entourage, and she purchased the land, which is known as University Park today. So very much a pioneer from Virginia. Both Margaret's parents were Virginia families. And Lillian attended St. Mary's School for Girls, which is at the corner of Garrett and Ross Avenue. This building is no longer there. You all will know that that's now the site of the cathedral St. Matthew's Episcopal Cathedral, and the original chapel of St. Mary's School for Girls is now part of the cathedral. Notables like Lady Bird Johnson attended school with Margaret's mother, Lillian B. Smith is her maiden name. Here is the Colonel, her grandfather. Her grandfather was the founding family of McKinney. He owned a lot of land at 380 up there in McKinney, and they had a big property there. They were from Virginia. He would be a mayor, a longtime founding mayor of McKinney. And here he is holding Margaret as a baby. I love this photo. A decorated colonel of the South in the Civil War. Here she is with her parents. You'll notice they look older. They were married almost 9 years before she was born. And that would have put her mother traditionally at an older age for having a child. They had a lot of trouble childbearing, many losses. And so Margaret was truly a treasure. She was the only child. And they had a prosperous life. Her father founded the Doggett Grain Company and stored grain, that property at 3600 Armstrong had some land around it. So they had a farm there and some gardens. They also had a farm near Farmers Branch. And he was always, during the Depression, she talked about how he was always giving away food. So there was a spirit of compassionate generosity from the very beginning. I love this photo because she's holding an object. So I think of her as with this quality instinct. She liked objects. Obviously, this is a doll, but it does have sort of a cultural taste. It looks like a Navajo figure with a baby in a papoose on the back of the figure. And so here she is. She also never took off her beads or pearls or necklaces. She always very much held a aesthetic for the feminine. And she's also carrying a Japanese parasol here, which I think shows me that she had an early interest in cultural taste. She loved cats. In fact, this little letter was written from a visit to Colorado from the hotel. Dear Mama, how are you and cats? Why don't you write love to all, Margaret? It's pretty cute. An adventurous for her entire lifetime, and I'm joyful that I got to be a witness to that, and trips to Mexico and the Western Isles of Scotland and even East Texas with her once. She didn't like East Texas as much as the previous two places I mentioned, but she did love very much this travel. This is interesting. If you're a member of First Methodist downtown, young Margaret at age 4 placed the cornerstone with her father at the corner there, literally the corner of Harwood and Ross, the one facing us right there on the edge. And she also made a donation. So this is Margaret Doggett. And at age 4, she was already giving. So groomed as a giver, groomed as someone that could host anyone, whether it was Margaret Thatcher or a dear friend or employee. And she had this capacity for making you feel so special and making you feel at home. That was a big part of Margaret's personality. Get that. Here, this is at the farm near Farmers Branch. So this was on the, I guess this was on the Smith side. And that's right, because the McKinney farm was on the Doggett side. And these are Texas girls, right? Talk about grit. Texas girls, this would have been about 1935, 36. She's here with a group of Hockadaisies out at the farm, these were friends that I met. These were ladies that she held very close until her 90s. And they lived a very long time and they were great fun. And then this is where I like to say the Crow Museum was born. So this is a portrait of Hockaday girls at the Belmont location, which is now the Alexan. I think that's kind of sad, but this is at Belmont and they were assigned the project of making a museum. So this is a Greco-Roman set of galleries that they built together. Margaret's the second on the left in the back row. And, I just think this might've been where it always was, because she was the one that raised her hand and said we should create a museum for the city. And maybe this was just a continuation of that vision for this project. It's interesting now that we've come full circle with UT Dallas, the concept is an Athenaeum, which is a hall of learning and engagement that goes back to the Greek goddess Athena. And so here it is. Really interesting that it worked out that way. One thing that I have in common with Margaret Crow is that we both lived at Scottish Rite Dormitory at UT Austin. Here she is as a freshman. She wanted to be in a sorority. She wanted to do all the social things. Her father was very strict. And the joke is that she had some friends write him a letter to encourage him that the Zetas were good Methodist girls. And she always joked that that wasn't true at all. So she became a Zeta, Tau Alpha at the University of Texas, and was very happy there. She made lifelong friends. However, and I should back up just a little, spring break of her junior year, her parents had been visiting her in Austin, and they were driving back through Waxahachie, and they were killed in a collision, head-on collision. And what's so strange about that, in the paper that I read, the person that hit them was also called Doggett, but not a relation. Just kind of an eerie coincidence. So Margaret received word that her parents were killed, and she was met at the train in Dallas by her favorite teacher. I think her last name was Harlan. She was one of the principals at Hockaday. And so at age 20, she became an heiress to the Doggett Grain Company, which at the time was very successful in grain storage here in Dallas. And so that was a tough spring. And she decided in August to go on tour with a group of girls from Texas, and they boarded the Athenia. And I wonder if anybody in the room knows what happened to the Athenia. I'd love for you to come off mute and give us your history prowess. We'll just see. It was 1939, August. You can't Google. Okay, so the Athenia, Barb, do you know?
Well, I don't, but Lori, who's sitting next to me, said she thinks it was torpedoed by the Germans.
It was the first passenger ship torpedoed by the Germans that brought the United States really into the war. And Margaret was in first class, of course, with these girls from UT Austin. There were 17. They were lowered into lifeboats first. They did see people die. You know, we always talked about it as a sensationalized thing, but once I started reading more for these talks, it was, I think, a third or maybe a fourth of the, I'm not sure. It's either a third or a sixth, but quite a number of people passed away that night. So it was very scary. And she said that they had on summer dresses on the North Atlantic. They were off the coast of Ireland. And they passed the whiskey around really to survive. That was how they kept warm. So that was startling. She arrived in Dublin, rescued, and it happened to be that Harry Ransom and his mother, he was a friend of hers. He had been her professor at one point at the university. So she's a senior now. They were able to meet her. And this is what the Salvation Army gave her. This is the clothing and the purse gave her in Ireland as a survivor of this tragedy. So and we also have the journal entries of Harry Ransom, knowing, you know, she'd recently been orphaned. Here she was in the middle of nowhere with no one to receive her. He was quite distraught that whether he didn't know for 5 days whether she was alive. So he happened to be there to help her. So I think that's why she's smiling, is a friendly Texan was there to meet her in Ireland. Not long after, she came to know that Trammell Crow, and this is taken downtown. I need to find the exact place where this is and kind of do a side-by-side, but she fell in love, and it was unexpected because he was not educated. He did not graduate from college. He was a bank runner and loved hanging out at the Baker Hotel. Very smart, self-taught, ambitious, learned accounting very quickly, and ended up at the end of his life with lots of education. I think he had several degrees, but at the time he was not what you would have expected her to choose, but he was very charming as he was when I met him. And it wasn't long, this is at a sorority dinner, he was in the Navy. It wasn't long before he proposed because he knew she was very special, and she told him that she had to graduate first. So all the priorities were in the right order. And so she did graduate that next year, 1941. And I think they were married in 42. The wedding was at the new Methodist Church at Mockingbird and Hillcrest, Highland Park Methodist, and the reception was at her house, and she gave it herself. So she's definitely at an early age a survivor and an independent woman of her own. Here's Harlan Crow. If anyone's friends with Harlan, he probably wouldn't like that I share this photograph, but I think it's pretty sweet. He was born in Orange, Texas. So with the Navy, they had some tours. They were in Orange working on war efforts. They were also, I guess, war relief at that point, almost. They were in New Orleans. They were in Orange, maybe one other place, Southeast Texas. And so she was building a family. And here are the 4 boys before Lucy Billingsley was born. Here, even though that's Trammell in the dress, but Trammell S. Crow. But that's what they would have worn at that time. And so Margaret and Trammell began, he worked for the company. He worked for Doggett Grain Company. And in the late 50s, early 60s, he met Mr. Stimmons, realized that Dallas would be this place where there could be great international business. Trammell knew about storage, he knew about warehouses, and he knew about business, like what people in business would need in terms of storage. So all of that came from his history with the industry of the grain company. Margaret had all the money because she'd inherited quite a bit in 1939. And so everything was successfully teed up for him to start his own company called Trammell Crow Company. And let's talk about Trammell as the builder. And many of you know the history of Trammell Crow and the Trammell Crow companies, partnering with Mr. Stimmons, owning a lot of the land along the Stimmons corridor. I'm going to go a little more quickly so I can get into the Asian art, building San Jacinto Tower and Chase Tower, the Anatole Hotel, and in many ways, the Anatole was the first museum. All of these spaces had Asian art. They had public areas with little vestibules, and Trammell Sr. felt very committed that next to every work of art was a little label. So there was this early adoption of education, that the collection's purpose was to educate. He believed in cultural competency. From an early age, he studied the philosophers of Confucius. He studied Japanese Buddhism. He studied Hinduism. We're going to hear my dryer distantly in the background. That tells you that this is like living the real authentic life. So he was worldly right here from his, East Dallas 75206 zip code. He was incredibly voracious and found ways to learn. And Asia caught him. It really did. And he would say humbly, I don't know what it is, but these objects move me. And so as they started traveling in 64, that was pretty early, and he would see things that he liked at auction and then bring them back to Dallas. And these next couple of slides indicate Trammell's position really as a national and international leader. This is October 22nd, 1963, the day that Kennedy was shot, and Trammell is at the dais telling the Dallas Citizens Council, Trammell Sr., telling the Dallas Citizens Council that the president is not arriving at the World Trade Center for lunch as they were expecting. So I think he's leading the prayer. It looks to me like people here are praying. And so that sort of puts him in a very intersectional moment in our city's history and the nation. He also was an emissary, and because of his love of China, after he built the World Trade Center in the mid-60s, China and Japan both came calling and said, we want a World Trade Center as well. And so he had extremely strong Guangxi, which was relationship with Chinese leaders. And Trammell Crow Companies did build a World Trade Center in Shanghai, and they built one as well in Tokyo, Tokyo, I think modeled after the one here in Dallas. So in 1989, this is September of 1989, following the tragic events at Tiananmen Square, George Bush Sr. sent Trammell. He didn't go, but he sent Trammell to deliver a letter of our country's dismay at the actions and events of Tiananmen Square to former Chinese President Jiang Zemin. So he was that person. He was incredibly gifted at sort of quelling tension and doing business and getting things accomplished in incredibly difficult situations. She was really also always at work. As I knew her, she was always at work every day. She was working on founding the shops at the Antidote. She managed and operated the 13 stores at the Antidote. Here's the ship, the second ship they owned, the Michaela Rose. The first yacht they had was the first private yacht to go up the Yangtze River Valley. But this is the boat, which was part of her adventurous capability. And here we have her hosting. Imagine being on a boat on the Yangtze River in China, and you're welcoming the commissioners from the Chinese government. How do you entertain in that kind of situation? How do you source the food and make sure the chef does everything in the appropriate way? You can see the cakes on the table are for Texas and China. All of that had to be sort of pre-scripted. It could not have been easy, but she did it with a beautiful sense of taste. She loved to shop, which was a founding part of our museum. And that she also raised her hand at the board meeting in 1997. Trammell Sr. had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And she raised her hand and said, I really think we should create a legacy and a gift to the city in terms of cultural education about Asia. Is there enough are there enough works of art in our museum to merit a collection? And so the Crow collection was born. We opened our doors 18 months after she asked that question. That's when I started as the museum educator. And I did that for 4 years and then became the director in 2002. And this is funny because he's touching the art. We don't really let people do that, but Trammell could. This was at the opening, and you can see her necklace. She's, holding true to that lovely accessory. Here's the Crow family at the openings. And from here, it's our board with Stanley Marcus, board at the time. And from here, and I love this portrait of Margaret. This is at the World's Fair in New York City with Trammell at the back and little brother, that might be Stuart in the front. I'm going to go forward just a little bit, and I want to make room for questions. But I think those of you that know us know our collection is Chinese art. Here's a beautiful jade just to take you into the weekend. Incredible craftsmanship, incredibly difficult to work. The sensibility that nature is powerful and what is our relationship with nature as humans. I think that led to our work in mindfulness, kind of creating spaces for contemplation. We also have Indian art in the collection. This is a 30-foot facade from Jaipur. And I'm going to just kind of take you through. I'm going to entice you to come and see the real thing. Japanese art is also in the collection. And I think you know that we became, as Trammell asked us to, a museum without walls. Culturally relevant and programmatically significant. These are our signature programs. This is at North Park 2 years ago. Probably just like today, except very different. Otsukimi is our Japanese moon-moving festival. And I believe a lot of this is in our DNA, to be a space for families, multi-generational families, and families with heritage from Asia. We know that that's a growing population. In the 2010 census, we show 660,000 residents of North Texas are Asian or Asian American. And that is what attracted us to UT Dallas. It is in the northern suburbs, or not northern, it's north. It's really 15.6 miles from downtown. That is the population area for so many of our communities that we serve and share the collections for. We'll build a second building. It will open 2 years from this fall, so 2.5 years from now. And it will be designed by Morphosis Architects, Tom Main. He's the architect of the Perot, and you may know his work. So the red plus sign is population center. And we've got the Arts District location. We will build a second museum. The Arts District location has 36 years left in the lease. So I figure in my career, we'll still have a downtown museum. The second location is forever. So that was part of the architecture of the deal, is that the Crow family would give the collection the endowment that is $25 million. and the long-term lease on Flora, which is $1 a year. It's a great lease to be in the Arts District at the nexus of the museums. In exchange, UTD gives operational support to the museum and promises to show art forever. So as long as until Gabriel blows his horn, there will be a Crow Museum of Asian Art. And I think this was the real gift of the deal, is perpetuity. And since Margaret passed in 2014, I had been working on how to bring the museum holistically into the public trust. So I'm a little over time. It's 12:44, but maybe Barb can tell us if we have time for a question. And thank you so much for your kind attention.
Absolutely. Amy, that was amazing. It was just fabulous.
Oh, good.
All right, we do have the one that you mentioned earlier from Rod. Is there anything else you'd like to add to, do you know the origin or the impetus of his interest and relationship with Asian art?
I would say it was probably a Dallas library in the 40s. So, really, Trammell found his way to these texts, and his son inherited that voraciousness for literature and history and religion. I think Trammell Sr. considered himself a Confucian gentleman. He always had jade pebbles in his pocket and wanted to sort of discuss at length the analects of Confucianism. Wow. And he knew that he believed in the principles of Confucianism, that a knowledge of jade is a knowledge of business. So,
well,
yeah.
It's served him well.
Well, good. And I thought I might just add in addition to the Asian populations north of 635 that attracted us to the second location, UT Dallas has a 43% Asian American student population. And the other thing, if you've been in our space downtown, you know that we don't have an auditorium, we don't have a library, we didn't have a university partner. And so this sort of satisfied all of those needs in a really interesting way. And I think all of those elements will come to fruition with the new building. And it will be part of an arts and performance complex. Okay. So multiple museums are cited for this southeast quadrant of the campus. If you're familiar with UT Dallas, as you come up the University Parkway toward the JSOM, the Jindal School of Management, our site is just south of there. So that whole parking lot.
Wow.
Great question, IDC Williams. We do. In fact, we have two, thank you for asking that. We have two visiting exhibitions right now. That's part of what the life of a museum is changed, right? People want to learn new things and they want to see things beyond the permanent collection. So we just installed a local artist, Kana Harada, who's a wonderful international artist living here in Dallas, of Japanese. It's like walking through a garden at midnight, and it's works made out of foam. It's pretty cool. And then upstairs, we have an installation of Japanese contemporary ceramic artists who are women. And that's from a collection in the Northeast. And we do, I think we'll fall into the academic schedule with a spring exhibition and a fall exhibition or two.
And so the museum is open now, correct?
The museum is open now. We're open Tuesday through Sunday, 11 to 5.
Great.
And it's very quiet. So I feel like, and we're following all the COVID-19 principles with exceptional care. So if you want a quiet, like kind of an not isolated, but if you want a private experience, come on down.
Okay.
I do see another question.
Yes.
Eric's asking, oh, wow.
Let's go ahead. Well, let's go ahead and read that in case.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Time, please, and then answer that.
Do you want me to read it? I can.
Yes,
so Eric's saying his mother traveled extensively to Asia in the 1980s and 90s. It was a good time to go. During this time, she collected an amazing amount of Chinese art, antiques, pottery, and other things. She is much older now, and I'm wondering what we will do with all of it when she passes. Do you look at items from estates and buy them? That's a great question, Eric. And I think part of our raised visibility with this acquisition has brought this question to light several times. So I'm going to put my email right here. And if you don't mind just reaching out to me. And for the rest of the room, if you're curious, the way that this works is we're talking to 4 families right now with this very question. And so there's my email. The way that, yes, the answer is yes. But there is a process of obviously analyzing the collections and making sure that it's a fit for that. We do have an acquisitions process. And then part of what you'll need to do, whether it's Crow or any other museum, or if it goes to auction, is an appraisal. So you'll want to get a sense of what is there. But I would say if she was traveling in the 80s, she probably did pretty well in terms of what she was able to bring back.
That's great. Well, Amy, I do have a couple questions for
Sure.
you as we wait. One is, can you tell us a little bit more about the Dallas as a city of compassion?
I can. Thank you for asking that. So, I think it's interesting. After programming the museum and the Asian collections for 20 years, and really after 10, compassion found its way into our work. And I think it had to do with studying Tibetan art, studying Buddhist art. Even Hinduism has real strong elements of compassion in the teachings. Vishnu is the preserver of the universe. And, we brought the monks every year from the mystical arts of Tibet. And we also taught, before other museums did, we taught yoga in the galleries. And all of those things sort of led to an awareness of why is this museum here? That was another question that I asked myself a lot, right? This little museum is tucked away at the base of a skyscraper with 2,500 employees up in these offices. And then if you multiply that by the other towers, just in our little radius, there were almost 15,000 people, human beings. So if I'm showing up to work each day, what is my purpose, right? What is the museum really here for? I also had a journey with cancer in 2011. And at that time, there were 4 executive directors in the arts district with cancer or immune-related chronic illness. And I was really, I had a concern for what is the health of the executive? What is the health of the executive director, and what is the health of the executive? And can the museum be part of that dialogue? And so I started studying the impact of looking at art slowly. That's one of the things that visitors taught us. Employees of the building would say, well, I just come down here to get away. And I came here to solve a problem. I love just sitting on a bench and being in these spaces, very healing for me. And so I think we kind of became that for people, an antidote to stress. So I started studying what are the antidotes to stress, and they all have histories in Asian philosophy: mindfulness, yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong. So many of the mindfulness and well-being practices are derivative of these cultures, just like our works of art. Many of the images in our works of art are actually teachers of compassion. So this led to 2015, the Dalai Lama came to Dallas and I met him. It was an incredible day at SMU. Maybe some of you were there. And he asked us to put compassion into action. And so I've spent the last 5 years trying to understand what that means and trying to help people with me look at what that means. And, I think that led me to the International Cities of Compassion, which are formed by a wonderful scholar named Karen Armstrong, Karen, like Karen Armstrong. And she's written over a dozen books about compassion as a common thread among faiths. And so we have worked to get Dallas. There's a charter for compassion. If you want to look that up, it's charterforcompassion.org. You can sign it as an individual. And many organizations that I serve on boards with have signed it. We're still working on the city of Dallas. But I like to say that we're already compassionate. We don't need to sign a charter to be a compassionate city. Fort Worth is technically a city of compassion, and you'll see it in Betsy Price's brand. If you know her, yesterday at the press conference for the tragic car, accident, I don't think we can say cars and trucks accident, she brought compassion right in at the very end and said, one of the things you can do over these next 4 days, which I'll just carry her message forward, is check on your neighbors. Just check on your neighbors. You don't need to be in the car. It's going to be cold. but what can you do to make sure your neighbors have what they need? And that is what a compassionate leader does, is just always help us frame what is the next right action? What is the next right thing I can do to alleviate another person's suffering? So we formed and around July of 15, we had the shootings in downtown Dallas. So there were some real urgent calls for what are the organizations going to do about this? And that's how the Compassion Council was formed.
That's wonderful. Let's see, I've got maybe just one more question. If you don't mind, if you would stop your share screen.
Oh, I'm sorry I didn't do that. Thank you. We can look at each other. I'm usually the first one to do that. Sorry about that.
That's fine. That's fine. I think that's a wonderful initiative. It really is. It's very exciting. And you mentioned your journey with cancer, and I did go back. There was a beautiful article written about you in the Dallas Morning News. It was last year in April. You talked about the role that silence plays in your life. And in addition to amazing photography, I understand poetry is a big part. And I would like to share with the members something that I read in that article. Just a short piece was, I live by the bells. Are we early or late? A rhythm of loveliness, a mindful state. And that was just beautiful. Can you tell us a little bit more about your thyroid cancer and the photography that you take, and hopefully have you published the book of poetry?
No, I'm going to though.
Yes.
Yes. So 2011, July, thought I was healthy and found a little nodule on my throat and kept trying to push it, get rid of it. I called the doctor. They wanted to see me pretty quickly. So that turned into, I guess it was June, but it turned into papillary carcinoma. And thyroid cancer is one of those things that you don't know until you know if it's the sort of aggressive, scary kind. I'm not using doctor's words. Or is it the more benign, which I don't like using the word benign with cancer because it just they don't go together. But is it more the benign, slow grow cancer? So fortunately I had the benign, which it took 6 weeks to find that out. And that was stressful. And so for the next year I had my thyroid out and I did the radiation treatments, I'm sure. And it's more common now than ever, which is, you just kind of wonder what's in our environment. But it was a wake up call. I had a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old at home. I was a high performing executive with a lot of stress in my life. And I found an integrative medicine doctor named Carolyn Matthews at Baylor. She is incredible, skilled and trained with Andrew Weil out of Arizona. And she said to me at the time, I want you to exercise. And I was like, well, I hate exercise. And she said, well, pair it with something you love. And I love White Rock Lake. We live over here. I'm just off of Williamson. And she said, okay, we'll take, I love taking photographs of White Rock Lake at sunrise. So that was the birth of the Pocket Sunrise Project. And I have taken photographs, thousands of them since 2011. I've had different series of 100 days in a row. Until this year, it was all sunrise. And I published them on my Instagram page and on my Facebook page. And then I started writing, and I realized what I was doing, looking at something slowly over time, is mindfulness. The definition that I like to use for mindfulness is paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, and non-judgmentally. And this comes from John Kabat-Zinn, who's the founder of mindfulness-based stress reduction. And so it became a mindful practice. I realized, I'm doing this like this, even though I'm not sitting sort of in lotus pose meditating, I'm actually creating a mindful practice. In fact, this year, I am going for 365 images of White Rock Lake standing from the same place. So, and this is a practice. I'm one of those people that loves to chase shiny objects. So if there's a new idea or a different view, I would always be shifting. This one is the practice of standing in one place. So it's called Standing in Place at White Rock Lake. And there are this is part of my shiny object. There's several books now, Barb, that need to be written. And And I do want to do the first one, which will honor the 10-year anniversary of surviving cancer. So, and the idea with that is a give get. So once the book is published, which would be 108 of the 10-year series of Pocket Sunrise with poems. And when you buy one, another copy immediately goes to Salmon's Cancer Center and MD Anderson in Houston. Something like that. So it's a give get. So that's the idea of Pocket Sunrise. And I'll just finish it by saying what I learned in my year of having cancer is that is the one thing that you fight for with everything that you have, every penny, every prayer, every resource. These cancer patients that I met at Baylor, they just want one more day. So it was a real waking up for me of what am I going to do, as Mary Oliver says, with this one wild and precious life.
That's beautiful. Well, our wish for you and for all of us is one more sunrise.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Absolutely.
you. And for all of us, yes.
For sure.
It's really cold right now, though. Yesterday was really tough. It's going to get worse.
It's going to be a bit of a weekend.
Yes.
Keep thinking it'll be a beautiful sunrise.
That's right.
I admire your dedication.
Thank you.
Great. Well, in honor of your speaking to us today, Amy, we are going to donate a book to the Preston Hollow Elementary School.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Our speaker next week is going to be Robert Wolonsky, and Bill Sleeper will be here doing what we call a fireside chat with Robert. So that will be a great program. And thank you, Bill, for lining that up. Before we go on to our four-way test, I just wanted to do a quick Valentine's tribute here. Elaine Allen sent in this wonderful poem. It's in this week's hub. If you haven't read it yet, it's just pretty sweet. It said, "You are the peanut to my butter, the water to my ocean, the glaze on my donut, the spring in my step, the twinkle in my eye, the blue in my sky, the cherry on my sundae, and the flip to my flop. You're my milk to my cookie, sweet to my dreams, cheese to my macaroni, and best to my friend." So to each of my Rotary family, I hope that you all have a wonderful Valentine's. We've got a lot going on. We've got the Chinese New Year and Valentine's Day and Mardi Gras next week. So lots to celebrate. And with that, yes, please, go ahead.
I just got the final details for March social. May I mention that real quick?
Oh, absolutely, Happy. Please do.
Thank you. I'm so excited. So on Sunday, March 13th, we're going to have a hypnotic walk. Do you need to release anxiety and stress? Then let's hit the trail. It's been said that nature is healing, that it's peaceful and restorative to your mind and body. Come with us as we walk in the natural world. You will learn how to do a walking meditation and give gratitude to the natural world, gain new insights to a problem, and release the current negative energy that's pulling you off your path. Hiking is hypnotic, and in that state, you can connect to your powerful subconscious mind that is vast, expansive, knowledgeable, and creative. We're going to go to Rivershawn Park on Sunday, March 13th, and it's going to be from 11 o'clock to 12:30. I'm really excited.
Happy, that is perfect. That it ties in perfectly with the message with today's speaker, and it's great to have something on the calendar. That's definitely in lockstep. That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. As you know, Happy's our social chair, so I appreciate she's got a couple of things brewing and outside and socially distanced, and we get to see each other again. Well, with that, we'll close the meeting with the four-way test. If you would please join me reciting the things we think, say, and do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And with that, I close the meeting and go out and enjoy your weekend. Stay warm.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Okay, I think we can leave.